all the guys in the green jackets who are members, who are the elite of the elite, the most wealthy in America, the most privileged in America, at least for that week, they're serving. Mm-hmm. They're working. They're holding they are there to make the experience be something special. Yeah. And I think you've created something when everybody is willing to sacrifice to be a part of it. Yeah. To play their part, to do their role.
Welcome to The Growth Project, a podcast brought to you by AMPLOS. Dr. Milt Lowder, Dr. Drew Brannon here. Got some new things at play here today. Maybe we should start there with mentioning some exciting updates.
Yeah, and I think, if you followed us on social media or even maybe listen to the podcast a little bit, we're in a new venture and a new partnership, a new opportunity with Elliott Davis. And you might kind of at first say, who is Elliott Davis? Well, if I got it right, Drew, a top 50 public accounting firm that is focused on tax and consulting and audit. But why did they seek us out? What made us decide to join forces? I think it's been an interesting play because I think you and I both owned the business. We've been in the business. I know kind of one of my driving factors when I became a psychologist, wanting to work for myself. But when you start to realize, and we talk a lot about, how do you create an environment that maximizes strengths and minimizes weaknesses? How do you create an environment that allows you to do what you do best? That created some interesting conversations the last several months about what might that look like. And so we are here in a temporary studio in a new environment as part of Elliott Davis now.
Yeah, thrilled about that. And if most people, I think most of our listeners are tuning in just on the audio file. But if you're watching online or you see the clip, that's why it looks a little bit different. Yeah. It is that we're in a different spot. But yeah, it's been exciting for us, and we've already begun to see just some neat opportunities for AMPLOS to broaden its horizons and scale. You'll be meeting Anthony Alibro, who's our newest team member, who's actually going to be in Nashville. So it's exciting to be expanding our team to other markets already. And Anthony is going to be on the Growth Project here real soon to tell more about his story. But it's neat and I think gratifying for us, having worked really hard over the years to really grow the reach and the impact of AMPLOS, and fully expect that to go on to new heights now through our relationship with Elliott Davis.
Yeah, and I think when you really believe like we do, how do we help people be better and pursue better, that this gives an opportunity to do that, to be more relevant, to reach more people, to help people find that harmony between well-being and performance. And I think what's interesting about this story is, I know you started working through leadership several years ago, but we created a program for Elliott Davis called the Ascend program, Futuring Growth, that we've run for the last 2.5 years.
Right. Yep.
And that went really well, talking about the mindset and skill set necessary for growth. And so that kind of created the conversation. And then you look at the culture. We talk so much around vision and values. And I know what we were attracted to a little bit is, the vision of Elliott Davis is to elevate all experiences by caring more. And the core values around doing the right thing and service to others and mutual respect and always getting better and quality really fit well. And I love what you've been doing for our team, is taking those core values and see how related they are to our old core values around growth and hustle and humility and teamwork. And it's a pretty good fit.
You learned those quick.
Well,
wow. Integrating right into the team there. I'm impressed.
Well, somebody asked me, I was like, are you keeping your core values? I'm like, well, I think we have some new core values now.
We do. But, and we don't want to spend too much time on the history of all this, but we have been fortunate enough to work with plenty of organizations over the years. Yeah. Everybody talks about culture. Everybody talks about values. Some of those organizations are actually serious about it. And when we first began to partner with Elliott Davis years ago, and I can remember vividly hearing these guys talk about the culture and how important it is, and the values and how important they are. And naturally, so I'll admit it, a little bit skeptical, because we've seen so many different examples along the continuum of that over the years. But it did not take long to see that they were absolutely serious about this. And we haven't had to be here long, from my perspective, to see that is a seriousness and a commitment level that extends beyond, like, throughout the organization.
Yeah, it's been neat to see not only now a vendor, and then as we were in conversations, and then now as a part of Elliott Davis, to see the consistency and how those have been lived out.
Yeah.
And I think the people that have been, they've been so welcoming to us. And, now we're a human capital. We're the human capital division for Elliott Davis. And the team has been so supportive. But you can see those core values are evident. And the leadership has been great in terms of, here are our vision, here are our values, here's what they mean, here's what they look like. And we want this to be an awesome experience for you and your team.
Yep. So, just excited to make that announcement. And you'll be, I think our listeners will be seeing more and hearing more about the details of that and in the upcoming weeks and months. And you'll notice even some things on social if you follow us there about some of the work that we're doing and the ways in which we're bringing all this together. So excited about it.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll say is just excited to be able to narrow our focus, increase our depth, build a team, and expand that scope and impact. So,
stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so pivoting, different, switching gears here and getting into the conversation for today. And we're going to talk about all things coming off of the weekend of the Masters. The Masters, which, this part of the country, I think there's probably no shortage of our listeners who were either watching or attending or some combination of both. But I get excited about it every year. I think the older I get, the more I seem to enjoy it. Not just what happens on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but just the whole build of the week. Like it's so fun how much of, I think, kind of a cultural centerpiece it is to this part of the country, especially.
Yeah, and I think there's so much about the Masters being the only major that's played on the same course every year.
Yeah.
And so what I love is the way they honor the tradition of past champions, the tradition of the Masters. They take your cell phone.
Yeah, so great.
I mean, it forces you to be fully present in the moment. That if you're a past champion, you're there for life. And to me, there's so many things we can learn. One of the most exclusive clubs in the country for this week, at least, is so inclusive. And makes it more about the patrons, more about the experience, more about the players than about themselves.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much we can learn of, I know you were down there working with a couple of players. I've had the privilege of working with a few players there, and that expectation, the burden of those expectations, just trying to win the Masters.
Yeah.
And so there's so many different angles. So we would just want to give you a few just of our observations. There's no prep here, but just kind of real, timely conversations around what did we observe, what did we learn, what are some of those challenges of trying to do something that is really hard to do. But then as a bigger picture, if you're running a company, if you're building a team, what are some of those lessons we can learn of, what's the old saying, the way you do anything is the way you do everything?
Right.
That's something that the Masters has down pat.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's where I want to start a little bit of the discussion is, we've talked in plenty of prior episodes with the Growth Project and a lot of the work that we do about the impact of environment on psychology. Like if you want to alter the way people think, if you want to affect the way they think, you better be paying attention to the environment, both positively and negatively. And so it was interesting, just as when we showed up yesterday, and there's plenty I could say about that, but even just walking in, it was just such a profound, I think, realization of like, oh yeah, this is why it's so hard to win this golf tournament. Yeah. Because for these guys who play and have played for all these years, if you could only accomplish one thing in the world of golf professionally, this is the one thing you would want to check off your list. And if you're good enough to do that, you're probably going to get some others along the way, right? But it's amazing how the environment of, and it's everything you just said, it's the history, it's the impeccable feel of the grounds, it's the esteem, the way in which this tournament is esteemed. The accumulation of all of that hits you.
Yes.
Whether you are a patron, whether you are a coach, a player, an agent, like it can't be ignored. Yeah. It's just so compelling the way that hits you as soon as you show up.
Yeah. And one of the keys we talk about in sports psychology all the time, can you focus on the moment and not the magnitude of the moment? And it's so hard to minimize the magnitude of the Masters.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, to me, some of the things that blow me away, like most everything you interact with as not a player, but even as a player, but most everything as a patron there is for that 1 week.
Yeah.
The whole practice range is just for the players that 1 week.
Yep.
The whole caddy shack, which is one of the nicest little places I've ever been in, or the golf channel where they film, it's all for 1 week. The bathrooms all for 1 week.
Well, I was just going to say that we had a chance to take one of my son's friends yesterday who'd never been there before, and we go in the bath. His comment was, even the bathrooms are nice
it's
here.
Unbelievable.
They're so nice.
And so everywhere you look, and like you said, Drew, the impeccable nature of the grounds, I think it's a great line. You cannot ignore this is special.
Yeah.
And you treat it with reverence and you treat it with awe. And as a competitor, it's so hard to keep in mind that it's just another golf tournament.
Yeah.
And that you got to go back to those things you can control. So I don't think you can minimize or ignore it. How you choose to interpret those emotions, how do you choose to stay focused in the present? That's the greatest challenge.
Right. Yeah. And I think, so let's translate that for a little bit, because I don't know how many of our listeners will one day be playing in the Masters. I hope a bunch of them are. But even as you think about like the life that you're in right now, you're part of a company, you're part of a team, you're like, really challenge you to think about, how much have you considered and really reflected on the existing environment that you have, the quality standards associated with it, the messages that it's communicating, whether you're intending to communicate them or not, and then think about the tempo that's setting and the psychology it's creating for the people that are a part of it, right? Because whether you want to or not, something exists there and it's affecting the way people think.
Yeah, and so what we know, go back to our growth mindset, Carol Dweck's research just over and over again supports that a change in the mindset, a change in the environment leads to a change in the mindset.
Yeah.
So not only does the mind become, like when we know you're in a new environment, especially one that's aesthetically pleasing, that the brain is more at peace, the brain is more relaxed, the brain's more open to suggestions and possibilities. But even a change in the environment can change the way you learn and think and act and respond.
Yeah. Okay, so one last comment on this I want to say about the environment that was interesting. I thought about it yesterday. So I was on location on Sunday for 2 out of the last 3 PGA Tour events. So I took one.
Oh, just a slight flex there.
No, here's where I'm going with this. So I missed San Antonio, but I was in Houston and I was at Augusta, although I know the Masters is not a PGA Tour event, but you know what I mean. So those 2 Sundays could not have been more different.
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect to the Houston Open, and like they could not have been more different. And it's exactly what we're saying right now is like it creates this dynamic where when you start asking the question of like an extremely skilled golfer like a Shane Lowry who shot 80 yesterday, how did he shoot 80?
Yeah.
And the answer is it's a really difficult golf course, and just you cannot describe the pressure that people feel.
Yeah, and so you can see some people going low, and I think there's such a fine line. You saw with Rory just on the weekend being at 12 under on Friday, and he shoots even par over the weekend.
Yeah.
So that fine line, you saw it last year just in those very specific, playing to win and playing not to lose. Mm-hmm. And when you get to a place for which maybe you're unprepared, and we know the closer you get to the finish, like the more you pick ahead and tend to focus on the outcome, which increases anxiety and decreases confidence, and learning how to handle that and be comfortable with that. And especially it's magnified.
Yeah. Well, even down to the fact of you could hear people in the gallery yesterday coming down the stretch. Everybody was saying, well, hey, anything could happen. Yeah. Anything. They weren't saying that on Friday.
No. And
it's true. It's just like the way that whole thing builds, anything can happen. So it's wild.
Yeah, you can think about how many players today are reliving those putts, and I think about Scotty on 17. Just right there, Scotty's round on Friday. He was the first player since 1942 I heard that went bogey free on the weekend.
Wow, I wondered about that.
1942, bogey free on the weekend, and
that's incredible.
And put himself back in contention.
Yeah.
And so, that's the piece, that pressure, that anxiety, that stress, giving each shot a life of its own, but not carrying the weight and burden of that was pretty amazing to watch. I think the cool part about Augusta, there's no phone. You aren't following the leaderboard. You're hearing the roars. You're trying to figure out what's going on. You heard Justin Rose talk about how people were so excited. He birdied the last 4 on the front, and there's so much energy. And he said at the end, it was a sympathy clap. People feeling sorry for him. And so you just feel the emotion of the crowd, especially at Augusta. in such a different way.
Yeah. There's something really special about here we are in 2026 to experience the feel of the excitement and the roar as they put the up on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Right. And so you think about how antiquated that is in many ways, right? It's a what is it, a piece of metal probably that they take them down. If you haven't been to Augusta, and if you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where the scoreboard is, and they take it down and they're about to replace it with a number. And you're about to find out like what that person did, because you're not on your phone. And when they put that number up there, like I think about when Rory got that double bogey early on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could hear it across the entire course.
Man, the first time I went in 1998, Marco Mira won. It's the first time I'd been there, and I remember David Toms birdied 7 straight. And every time that score, and he would birdie another.
It's amazing.
And then Nicholas got hot in 98 on the back 9. I don't know if he shot 3 or 4 under, but you could hear the roars. And I remember one of the guys was like, I'm going to follow the bear. Like you just knew where he was by the sounds on the course. And you could feel that yesterday.
Let's talk about the phones.
Yeah. How awesome it is to be without your phone. You know, what was that like for you? What was that like for Nate?
Well, with 2 teenage boys with me, are you kidding me? Like for those boys to go, you know how many times they complained about it? Zero. But the thing, and this is not gratefully the first trip there and everything, and I always come back and everyone talks about the phones, and I can't help but think, you can do that anytime you want. Right? You don't need the people at the Masters to tell you can't bring your phone in here to be away from your phone. Why do you think it is that although we're so struck by that, we don't replicate it?
Because again, the environment forces you to do it.
Yeah.
And it's just part of it. You don't ask any questions. And what's the research? 40% of what we do without thinking. And the phones and technology have become such a part of our life. We haven't created the right environment to distance ourselves from the phone. And again, everybody does it there. If you're the only person at your house that puts your phone up, if you're the only person at work that doesn't pay attention to your phone, and it becomes just a habit that we aren't even aware of it, which also makes us not aware of the impact it has on our relationships, on our conversations, on our peace of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to me is like you think about many people, if you said to them, hey, I'm going to take your phone when your day starts and I'm going to give it back to you at the end, would have some type of internal freak out. And I mean, if that was on a Monday or something like that, I can understand that to some degree, right? But like everybody looks pretty happy at the Masters. Yeah. Like they don't seem like they're missing anything. Yeah. They don't seem too worried about like they're missing out on something. They're just in it.
Well, I think that's also suggests, part of what they do well, that you're creating the right environment, is they create an experience everybody can enjoy.
Yeah, right.
At whatever age. And so if we talk about how do you replace a negative thought? Well, you got to replace it with a positive thought. If you got a bad habit, you got to replace it with something that demands your attention, that you aren't worried about what you're missing out on. And when you're at the Masters, there's really no other worries or concerns.
Yep. Yeah. And I love, the other thing I was thinking about is that they've done everything, like they've innovated over and over and over again. Right. So we were pulling up as we were driving down there, and one of the little guys that was with us, he was all fired up about going to the shop, of course. And he had a written out list from everybody in his family of what he was supposed to buy for everybody.
Better bought his credit card.
Yeah, he did. He wasn't using mine, Right?
Yeah, I know that.
He did. He had it. But he said, what brands do they have there? Like what brands are their shirts and all this? And I was like, they got their own. And so, I mean, they've created, and they've done that everywhere, right? Like they've created, what kind of...
I don't know if I saw the Peter Millar this year. They used to have the Peter Millar, but I didn't see him. Yeah, I didn't see him.
Yes, I don't know exactly when that happened, but like all the apparel in there, everything is Masters brand.
Yeah.
And then you go, like, you're not going to find Coke. You're not, like, it's all their own. Like, it's their own. I don't think they're manufacturing Gatorade or anything like that, but they found a way to create
sports drink.
Yeah, exactly.
Lemon lime.
Like it's a partnership of some kind where they've created their own derivative of.
Yeah, they want zero sponsorship.
Yeah, that's right.
And even the way they put on the Masters, now that came out by default. They realized they didn't need all the sponsor money, and so you're able to watch so much of the Masters with limited commercials. So they have 3 sponsors. Like even the experience on TV, they want it to feel special and feel different.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the app too.
Oh yeah.
So I actually read an article about this earlier today, and that well, have you read about the IBM article?
No.
Okay, so this is off the cuff here, right? So don't look it up. No, this is a quiz. It's a quiz. Don't look this up.
Don't look it up. Okay.
So
I'm not looking up.
How many full-time people does IBM have working on the Masters app year round? Keep in mind, it's used 1 week out of the year. How many full-time people are allocated to the app?
I'm going to say just a ballpark 97.
That would be a whole lot of people. Okay. I thought this was a big number, but not as big as you did. 35.
35.
So 35.
Yeah, I was thinking for the whole week, like how many people are monitoring the app, but you're talking about all year.
All year long,
Okay.
there are 35 full-time.
I was thinking about the team for the week.
Now, during the week, I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
But that's not including all the people at the cameraman. Like, I'm not counting those people.
Yeah, just the app. Not the content creators, just to support the app.
35 people are working on that app year round.
Well,
that's incredible.
So they also have a place called Berkman's Place, which is a different part of the property, and they have a couple of restaurants in there, and they have an Italian restaurant that somebody was telling me that Fred Ridley was over in Italy, and he ate pizza at the first ever Michelin star pizza restaurant. And he told the guys, like, I got to have this at the Masters. So for 1 week a year or two, this guy comes over and cooks pizza for the people at the Masters.
I'd call that an example of quality.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah. But that is an interesting, now granted, let's keep in mind, they have the resources to do things like that.
Yeah.
And we never want to minimize resources, but there's still a lesson to be learned here of, like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, why can't it work? Why can't we do something? And just to be able to see possibilities, see opportunities. Again, I understand you got to also sometimes have resources to go with that, but there's no limitations on how they have thought about what it could be.
Yeah. And I think what I like about it is all the guys in the green jackets who are members, who are the elite of the elite, the most wealthy in America, the most privileged in America, at least for that week, they're serving. Mm-hmm. They're working. They're holding they are there to make the experience be something special.
Yeah.
And I think you've created something when everybody is willing to sacrifice to be a part of it.
Yeah.
To play their part, to do their role. And we talk about the growth mindset you mentioned earlier, or honoring tradition. But to me, the ability to be innovative from a position of strength, there's no doubt about why they exist or who they are. And you cannot walk through that without feeling like this is where some of the greatest players in the world have played the game. This is an unbelievable experience. This is Bobby Jones' masterpiece. Even naming the place Berkman's Place, they built the property on Fruitland Nursery. And the guy who owned Fruitland Nursery was Mr. Berkman. And so, but there's always innovation.
Yeah.
The technology in the course. I heard Rory say that 11 was a brand new green. And what I also heard is they kill the course every year.
I did not know that.
Like, they're going to shut it down in May, and I think they kill everything and reseed in the fall.
Man.
Every year. Now, that is off the cuff. I heard that secondhand, but
well, we'll know who to blame if that's
yes.
wrong. Okay, so what else would we want to touch on of just what really captivates anybody who's there about kind of the weightiness of not just the place but the tournament itself?
Well, I think this the exhaustion, the energy it takes. One, physically, you don't get a true sense of the terrain features.
Yeah, on TV.
Yeah, on TV.
Right. We talked about that yesterday.
The topography changes. And so it's a pretty good workout to walk that whole course. And so you do it for 4, 5, 6 days, and you do it trying to win the Masters. And I know Nicholas saying historically that it's really difficult to be fully present for every shot for 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
And so now you add the pressure and the winds, and every decision is magnified. Yep. How do you pick a target? How do you stay aggressive when your whole body is feeling the tension and anxiety and telling you that, hey, this is a really big deal? I think that, well, I know we talked a little bit about that, but to me, that's, you can get in trouble in every hole.
Yeah, there's no layups out there.
Yeah. Think about Rory yesterday. He's got a 2-shot lead, and he is in the rhythm, in the zone, and he blocks his tee shot way right. If that is in a bush, there's a good chance he's not making bogey.
Yep.
But he gets a break and hits a great shot and
But even to your point, like there are holes out there where you can hit a ball right down the middle of the fairway, and because of the undulations of everything, you're in the fairway, but guess what? You probably wish you had a better lie.
Yeah.
You know, you're like downhill, up, like whatever it is. And it's hard.
And so the importance of a good team.
Yeah, right.
Around you got to have people that help you keep things in perspective. And you got to have a good routine through the week of how do you engage and disengage, and what's your process, not only in between each shot, but in between each hole, but in between each round. I think that's another thing that I know you were there. You had a couple of guys, and they played really well, I thought. But the importance of having a good team, people that you can believe in, people that you get to be human in front of, vulnerable with, that life isn't supposed to be a solo sport, even though golf is more about the player. I mean, the caddy relationship, trust. I mean, all that comes into play. And I think sometimes we don't pay attention to those factors of how do we put that into practice in our own life. Well,
and that's, maybe there's a point in there too of why is that team so important? Because unlike, this might sound crazy to people that maybe haven't, either talked with or known people that play on tour, but there are plenty of events that go on the PGA calendar where some of the guys that show up don't really want to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, like they're there and they realize this is their job, but like the degree to which they're excited to be there, bought in and locked in, it can really vary. It can really fluctuate for so many different reasons. Not that week.
Yeah.
Like not Masters week. Like everybody that's there wants to win so badly. And as a result of that, right, the margins get thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. And so why do you need your team behind you? Because you can't give away energy, distraction. Like you can't afford to give away anything.
Yes. And I think the other piece of that, what you just said, is what people don't realize. The tour is really a lonely place.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
And it can be really dark.
Big time lonely.
And now you don't feel it this week.
Right.
But it's a grind. And so it's easy to look at the ones who are at the top of the game. And life's a little bit easier when you get on your private jet and, show up and you don't have to worry about money, but that is not the majority of the players. No. But this week, if you kind of been going through that, you've been building, and I think even now, people like Rory and Scotty, and I heard even Justin Rose say at his age, like all my effort is focused on the majors.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're building up for 4 or 5 tournaments a year, if you count the Ryder Cup or the President's Cup. That adds even more pressure. You got 1 in 4 chances to win a major.
That's right.
And Justin Rose has been so close.
Yeah.
So all that is at play.
So you're then defining your year primarily through the small sample size that everybody wants to win so badly. Yeah. That's hard.
Yeah. And
much harder.
Now, I do think I heard Rory say yesterday on the way home, I was listening to his interview, and I thought he handled it really well. But that last year, winning the Grand Slam, winning the Masters, like he's been trying to do that forever, that there was such a huge letdown after it. A little depression, a little bit lost energy, lack of motivation. And it was great hearing him talk about a new perspective that just became a dot in his journey. And it's the research we know about Olympic medalists, like the gold medalists and the silver medalists do not live as long as the bronze medalist. And so I do think keeping it in perspective, whether you win or whether you lose, is so important. But it was nice to get that from that experience.
Yeah, it's like, although it's a great accomplishment, it's like every other accomplishment you could ever reach. It doesn't fulfill forever.
No.
It doesn't deliver long term.
No.
I love when people come face to face with that. It's always
and so it was nice to see that maturity for him to say, like, all that, to realize. And then even last year they asked him, is this the greatest moment of your life? And even then he said, it's the greatest moment of my golfing life.
Yeah, good perspective.
And so that's maintaining perspective. Even if it's the Masters, can you separate who you are from what you do, define your own success, and be proud of how you compete?
Right. Yeah. Man, there's just so much to it.
Like we keep talking
it's so
forever.
Much more than just a golf tournament. And I hope that many of our listeners, if you haven't had a chance, I know it's tough to get there. It really is. And I know both of us are super grateful for the opportunities we've had to be a part of that tournament. And it's tough to get there. And each time you're there, it's just special. Never gets old. And so if you haven't gotten a chance to get there, I don't have a great mechanism for you to get
The lottery
there.
opens up June 1st.
Call Milt.
Yeah.
Call Milt.
Yeah.
But I hope you get there somehow.
But I do think this is one a little bit different for us. We just kind of went off the cuff and talking about this, but I do think there's so many lessons we can learn from that in our own life. And I think the one I'll leave, I don't think I said this earlier, maybe I did, but you and I were just talking beforehand. The old proverb, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And I think that's, if I could sum up the Masters mentality of how they put on this tournament, there's no stone unturned.
Yep.
I mean, how many thousands of pine trees do they have, and how many pine cones? Like, you don't see a whole lot of pine cones
or squirrels. Okay, I got a last story here that we can end on. Maybe to your point, completely corroborates your point. There is, we were leaving. We stayed almost to the very end yesterday, and as Rory was starting on 18. I was like, all right, boys, let's go. So we headed out, and so the tournament is like, what, 15 minutes away from being over.
Yeah. And
people are leaving in droves, and a ton of people had already left. And so, of course, what do you do before you're going to hit the road? Hey, we're going to go to the bathroom, right? So we go in the bathroom, and the tenacity with which the people in there were cleaning that thing up at that moment. And I'm thinking, like, they could easily just leave this.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's over. Everybody's about to get out of here. But they were cleaning that thing like it was Thursday morning.
Yeah. And they had been there all day.
Yeah.
And they're just there to serve you.
Yeah.
Have a great day. Hope you enjoyed the Masters. Come back and see us.
Right. The 13-year-olds with me didn't really notice that. Fair enough. But I did. And I was like, wow, that is really, really impressive.
It is really a spirit of service.
So, okay. Well, thank you for tuning in as we open with today. Excited about this next chapter of AMPLOS here, powered by Elliott Davis, and excited about that. And as always, just thankful for our listeners and excited about taking the growth project to new heights as well, which we anticipate will be a big part of one of many things that you're seeing with AMPLOS on the growing going forward.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be here without you, our listeners and our clients who trust us and listen to us and think we have value to offer. And so if that's the case, please, I always say this wrong, like us or follow us. I don't know what the right terminology is, but please send us your questions. We love taking your questions and trying to figure out how to take this content and make it more relevant in your life.
Thanks so much.